like, oh, these damn out-of-staters. Like,
Oh, we do.
Or driving around, I see like Minnesota license plates. I'm like, who these guys think they are? In my Pennsylvania license plate. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, it's almost food plot season, Jared, and Deer Grow is one of those products that has really changed the way that we plant food plots and the success we've seen from them.
No doubt. I've been, trying to plant food plots my entire whitetail hunting career, which is a little shorter than yours. But the minute that I started, or that I realized that I could get Deer Grow back into some of these remote plots where I couldn't get lime or fertilizer, especially in the 50-pound bag, format. Mm-hmm. So everything was changed. I could get into these spots moving forward with a backpack sprayer, and that's since escalated to these 40 or 60 gallon sprayers, and we're doing upwards of 5 to 10 acre food plots just with Deer Grow and having phenomenal success.
Yeah, and with the price of fertilizer, lime, diesel, everything this year, what better way to get in there and grow a successful food plot at about a third of the cost? Check out Deer Grow at deergrow.com. And we're back.
Hey,
episode 85.
Hey,
part 2. See that?
There you go.
So I did that.
Do.
Duh.
You
remember Hot Shots back in the day? Did you ever watch that with Charlie Sheen?
Yeah.
Hot Shots part 2.
Part 2. Great movie.
Yeah. Classic Charlie Sheen.
Yeah. They don't make movies like that anymore, man.
No. Well, it is July 21st.
Yes, it is.
Almost in August.
Whoa, dude, July's been flying.
I know. Yeah.
I got my whole rod. Dude, I hope I don't blow my wad earlier. Like I've got more bucks at this point in the year this year than I think I ever have.
And so did you get everything planted this weekend?
13 food plots.
Holy fudge.
One day.
Whoa.
3 guys, 13 food plots.
2 dragons.
And a box blind. We got a muddy box blind out.
That's impressive.
On a food plot that we had 250 plus inch 3-year-olds last year. So I'm super excited about that one. Got Deer Grow and everything. The way to do that is...
Caught that rain last night.
We caught a rain last night. It's perfect, dude. Mm-hmm. We got... we did... how we do? I had Dad and Jed on tractors.
Yeah.
And so they started disking first thing in the morning. Dude, it's just awesome. Every time I go up there, we saw so many deer.
You had a good plan, too.
We had a good plan, yeah. So I had first thing in the morning, I had already sprayed everything 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Dad and Jed...
Box blind had already arrived.
Jed already built the base of the box blind, too, which saved us an hour.
Huge, yeah.
Yep, Dad had fixed the sprayer, which ended up breaking.
Everything was already nuked.
Everything was nuked. So Dad went in and Jed, and they started disking right away.
Mm-hmm.
And
are you disking or are you tilling?
Disking.
You are disking.
Yeah, just disking. Tilling takes too long.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, dude, at this point, I would seriously consider not turning any soil at all. I really don't know why we're doing it.
We talked about that because, I planted in Kentucky, and I disked 2 plots, and then the third, I never got to spray. And, it's tall, thick, thick grass. So I broadcasted brassica into it, and then I came back and I nuked it with Roundup. And I'll be interested to see what happens.
I did that on several occasions last year, and it worked great.
Ugh, that'd be awesome.
Worked great. So,
it's dying. I've been seeing pictures from my camera. Like, it's I've nuked that plot. It's dying.
Well, dude, that's for sure germination that you're seeing there.
Isn't that crazy?
That's green carpet.
So we've used, you guys obviously can't see this picture, but I sent Jared last night 4 days, and we caught a rain the day after I planted. But I planted Real World Plot Topper.
Yep, so I did all that.
Yep.
I did 6 acres of that.
Yep, and then I came back and I hit it with Plot Start the next morning. That next day we got a really good rain. And so it was 4 days as of yesterday. And I sent you that picture. I'm like, dude, am I on drugs or is this significant germination? it's green. You could see the green carpet going.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's where, when you start thinking about food plots, timing is everything.
Yeah, 100%.
And we plant, a lot of people say, well, guys, it's mid-July. What are you doing? If you want to have significant bulbs on those brassicas, you have to plant them now.
Huge bulbs.
Yeah. Huge. I'm talking huge.
Yeah, that's typically the case. Even on that plot topper bag, it says plant as early as August 1st, and I'm throwing them in the ground.
Well, and I've planted brassicas here in Pennsylvania in usually the second or third week of August, just because of timing and how it works out with rain. And I'll get great, leaf on top of them, but I never have
Well, see, and that's not right. I mean, that's fine, and it looks good for a bit, but there's nothing happening underneath.
Nothing.
And the reason we planted earlier is just because we're counting on some drought in August,
Sure.
and maybe even into September.
Sure.
Without fail, we're worried. We're
Yep.
like, oh, we haven't gotten the rain, and
Yep.
so if we buy ourselves 2 weeks into July, regardless of lack of rain, they'll just sit dormant for that period.
Mm-hmm.
We've had pretty good success with.
As soon as you
fully
get that
grown food
rain,
plots.
it'll explode. Yeah. So I've got Kentucky planted. You got Ohio planted. I'm going to hit behind the house in Pennsylvania this weekend because we've got a lot of rain supposedly next week. That's what it says.
Starting Sunday night.
Yep. So I'm going to try to get everything planted behind the house this weekend. I'll probably get sprayed on the mountain. And then next week is Whitetail Properties meeting for us in Kansas, which is part of our guests we're going to talk about today. Missouri, Kansas, yeah. And then the week after we come back, so that first week of August, I'm going to plant all my food plots in Ohio. And that'll be, then we're off and running.
Maybe I'll try to come down and help you.
Okay. I think I'm going like on a Tuesday or something. Just to blitz it.
Yeah, Tuesday works.
Sure. Yeah, just to blitz it.
Also, because our listeners are probably tired of hearing me talking about it, not doing anything, I finally have this early successional habitat project like in motion.
You just got to let it go, Jared.
That's what we're doing. So, it's taken me 2-3 years of kind of like circling the right strategy, whether it was to plant switchgrass or employ some kind of early successional release program, which, is kind of not as widely talked about. It's kind of Craig Harper and
I mean, people,
the older QDMA guys had knowledge on that.
I think people gravitate, and I'm not saying he's wrong, but if you've watched any of Winky's new stuff on his farm, his solution is planting acorns.
Yeah.
Like that's what he's doing. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but in these big fescue, old pasture type places, man, if you can have 20 to 30 acres of just whatever's in the seed bed, successional growth, not only are you going to have food early in it, it's going to provide amazing cover for 3, 4, 5 years. And then if we do the right breaks around it, we're going to burn that son of a gun, and then it sets it all back again.
So the reason that it's taken me so long is because a lot of this happens during the hunting season,
100%.
which is not
cool season time frame.
Typically how you think about it. It's like, well, this is hunting season, this is food plot season. So my strategy for this right now, and this may change, I'll obviously keep this updated as we do it, but we're going to, and I've got, maybe 50 or more acres of this stuff. We would do 50 to 100 acres at some point.
It will change the farm.
100%. We're gonna brush hog first, sometime in August or September. The goal is just to remove, make it a manageable amount of litter, ground litter essentially. We'll go back mid-October, October 15th to the 25th. If I catch a warm afternoon or something, we'll go out and I'm gonna glyphosate everything.
Yeah,
spray it all. We'll leave the waterways and stuff, so it'll be kind of 10 acres at a time, knobs. And then 2 to 3 to whatever weeks later, sometime in November, I'll have Dad go out with a disc and put in our fire breaks in the fall. And
are you gonna throw a clover in those fire breaks?
Yeah, maybe in the spring. In spring. So we'll turn it over just so we have bare dirt.
You could put it in November, and you'll get a little growth, and it'll go dormancy, and then it'll be ready to go in the spring.
We'll see. I'll be hunting. So I'll let Dad go out and disc, and then So come February and March, we will have a sprayed plot with breaks put in with or without clover in the breaks, and we're gonna burn.
Yep,
we're gonna burn it off, and I'll have you out, and Nick we'll film it or something, and then I'm gonna have. When we may pick up another disc here in the meantime, like a 10-foot 2-row disc, multi-row disc, and we're going to turn everything over.
Turn it over. Yep.
That's it.
And and we talked about this with Craig, like the first thing you're going to see is stuff that it's not desirable, but it's not what you're looking for. It's that early disturbance, like out of the ground, quick to grow, spring, summer type stuff.
Ragweed is what I'll have.
Yeah, ragweed. There's some other, pigweed and things like that that'll come up too. and then as that stand matures, that stuff goes away, and that's when you start to see like your greenbrier or your black raspberries or your blackberries, like those are the things that really start to build in, and that's what you want.
And you can see on our property essentially test patches of that where we've had unsuccessful food plots.
Sure.
That we didn't burn necessarily, and I didn't spray at the appropriate time in October, which
you just left them.
The point of that is to try to kill the grasses, but leave the stuff that's dormant, which will be your broadleaf weeds that we want. And those are thick as heck. I mean, those are 4 to 6 feet of just thick briars, greenbrier.
That's all you want, man.
Multiflora, blackberry. So yeah, I'm confident that it will work.
Very cool. That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, we got lots going on. I mean, a couple more podcasts here, and we're talking about next weekend being like the opener of Kentucky.
Well, dude, I don't know the number for sure. I'm going to say I've got 6 to 8 shooters.
That's wild.
That I'm fully aware of right now, having a good idea of where they're at.
I thought Nick was taking his shirt off. I was like, holy cow, man. It's easy. You're getting hot and heavy in here.
Couple real good ones. I mean, I don't think I have any booners on camera.
Yeah, no
yet.
super giants, but several mid-50s to high 50s.
Unicorn buck, made it a year. So which is amazing. To go from 3 to 4 on our farm, like that's
a big one.
Huge win. So he went from low 40s to I'm going to say mid to high 50s this year.
Yeah.
Big, 12 point. That there's a deer that I passed on. Maybe we'll post it to social at some point. This 3-year-old I called in looking right up at me in the stand. I've got like the best picture you could ever imagine. That sucker put on a frame.
Yep.
And so they're starting to stack up, and the guys are.
That's it, man. I mean, just
excited.
Start watching them food. I put the one thing I'll be interested in is I planted one plot with real world soybeans last weekend, so mid-July, with the goal being to have 12 to 18-inch green beans for the Kentucky opener, which is September 3rd. And if that happens, probably one of the boys is, I would say, going to get a shot at one of those big velvet bucks in that Kentucky bottom.
Nice.
So we'll see. I've never done it before. I've heard other people use that strategy in the past. And the foolproof plan is if those beans fail, meaning they get eaten to the ground, then I just come in with oats and whatever and first week of September and just make it a green field.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like as scattered as we were maybe 2 weeks ago, we've recollected. We've recollected, and we've got a plan, and we're
enthusiasm renewed.
We're heading towards it at this point. So I guess that leads into next week. So next week we have the national sales meeting for Whitetail Properties in St. Louis. So we're going to be there with 350 agents. Be a good time. Really starting to share stories, what's working, what's not. The market is definitely turning, but you and I have had some really good success here in July. Seems like buyer market really is kind of turned on for us.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. And then the more exciting part of that is we leave Wednesday night. We're going to drive to Kansas City, and that means Thursday and Friday morning we will be in Southeast Kansas hanging stands and camera and probably 100-degree heat.
It's okay.
But our guest today...
Ticks in our butts.
Yeah, ticks in our buttholes. What's Bryan's last name?
Ross?
Bryan Ross.
Hey, Bryan.
Hey, Bryan. Which is, what's his handle? Kansas Shed Hunter?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, check out Kansas Shed Hunter. And as the name would entail, the dude picks up giant sheds in Kansas.
Yeah.
So,
hence our connection. I think I just basically reached out to Bryan and said, hey, man, cool Instagram channel. You guys find a lot of giant sheds. We'd love to get on a podcast and chat with you.
Yeah. So obviously our table always consists of a lot of sheds. I would say, dude, 90% of these sheds are Kansas sheds. This isn't.
If not all. These are all from Kansas.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a PA
Yeah.
Euro.
Everything else is, I killed this buck. But yeah, everything else is Kansas sheds. Yeah. So yeah, exciting to kind of talk to him, and then obviously we will keep filling you in. Nick, when is this one gonna air? This one will be not next. So Mark Drury is
this Tuesday coming up.
Okay.
So 2 Tuesdays from now.
So if you're listening to this, hopefully, if Jared and I pulled this off, last Thursday night we will have done our first YouTube live, which will be we'll be in Kansas. So since we aren't going to be filming a podcast that day, we figured, hey, let's do a YouTube live.
We'll have some high lifes in hand, some SD cards getting looked through, and we'll just jump on and, I don't know, chat with you guys and field any questions or just talk about what we're doing in Kansas.
Yeah, probably get a lot of questions because Mark Drury will have dropped that week.
Cool.
So anyways, let's tune in with Bryan here and talk about shed hunting.
Right on.
Kansas.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
Not too bad.
Awesome.
Another warm one here in Kansas, but
we'll
manage.
Dude, I almost wore my Eureka Tornado shirt today, I was saying, for the Kansas Spirit.
Nice. You guys pumped about being in Kansas?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's been... So Jared and I didn't draw last year. Well, I guess we did go and shed hunt that March. So that would have been March of 2020.
Yep.
Or April of 2020. And then we didn't draw, so we didn't come back that fall, and we did not go back and shed hunt last year either.
It's been a long time. It's been 2... Really? Is that the case?
Mm-hmm.
It will have almost been 2 years by the time we get back there.
April of 2020 was the last time we were there, so it'll be over 2 years.
Yeah. Well, dude, that's why it's so special is when we do get out there. It's like, man, it's been so long since we were here, and it's an amazing place, you know. So we I think some guys take for granted that they get to run out there all the time, and it's like, we're in Kansas. Mm-hmm. For us, it's a monumental experience to even just get to go and hang cameras and stuff because it only happens once every a year, essentially.
Yeah, the unknown in Kansas is pretty special, I think. Especially, I mean, I hunt public, so you just never know what's going to show up. Even if you're running cameras all the time, it's just amazing sometimes the deer you'll see, the quality of deer we have here. And I'm fortunate enough to hunt here all year round, which is awesome. But out-of-staters that come down here, I mean, it is something special, I think.
Well, and Bryan, I think one thing, because obviously we are the out-of-staters. I've been hunting there. I've been hunting there since 2013, and in the last 4 to 5 years, because you've been hunting there 4 or 5 years now.
At least, yeah.
This
will be my sixth year.
It definitely seems like we have seen an increase, especially during bow season, of the number of out-of-state bow hunters in that Kansas area.
And it's funny how we find ourselves too, like, we're like, oh, these damn out-of-staters. Like,
oh, we do.
We're driving around, I see like Minnesota license plates. I'm like, who these guys think they are? In my Pennsylvania license plate.
We're like you, Bryan. Even though we do have a couple leases there, like we hunt a lot of public land, Army Corps land in our case, in that area.
Yeah, definitely a lot of out-of-staters, but I like to focus on those out-of-staters being there, first week, second week in November, which if you can go after or before that, Halloween time, a lot of those public areas, you won't see any cars, and it's pretty crazy, and you'll get on big deer for sure.
Yeah.
But I usually focus on later after the rut or before the rut.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's not pressure, which is just being here all the time. You see that. Mm-hmm. And that first week in November, there will definitely be a lot of out-of-state tags in those areas where you usually don't see cars. And
well,
that's a good time to focus on.
We typically get there the third week of November, so that week before Thanksgiving. And we still see some out-of-staters, including ourselves down there, but it's we've kind of bounced around. I killed my biggest buck ever like 3 days before Christmas down there, in the late season. But, we like to have that opportunity to catch that later part of the rut, just because you never know what's going to, end up pushing through one of these draws or anything. And, we typically have a pretty good idea of what bucks we're hunting, just because we are going to, we'll be down there next week getting cameras and stuff. But, there's always those surprise deer that show up, and you're just like, for us, and again, maybe this is where it's not unique to you, Bryan, is the amount of territory that these bucks cover during that November time period in Kansas. Like, we're used to it, in the Midwest, but like in Kansas, I mean, these bucks are covering multiple miles per day. that's what I think took Jared and I some time to get used to. It's like he may be 2 miles from me hunting. We're hunting the same deer.
Yeah, definitely. Especially around Thanksgiving, they really start cruising, covering miles, looking for those does that are about ready to be bred, and they're miles. I find that when I find later on, I'm finding shed 2 or 3 miles apart to matching deer, and it just amazes me how far they travel. It's just crazy. And during the rut, they're just, especially getting to South Central Kansas where there's 10-acre like timber lots, there's not very many trees down there. So they're just going lot to lot, covering miles, looking for these hot does, and they're just covering ground. It blows my mind.
Yeah. And
up here, they cover miles, but there's so much thick timber. They're sticking to their core areas, I think, around northeastern Kansas.
I gotcha.
But
yeah.
they are still covering a lot of miles.
Yeah, so we're in the southeast part of the state, and we're seeing that it's very pasture based. A lot of cattle grazing in those areas, some ag in areas, and it's just corridors of timber along the creek bottoms and river bottoms.
Yeah.
And
well, we're hunting a major river bottom, so essentially like anything around it is kind of an offshoot. I mean, it's classic Kansas, getting a river bottom, find a corridor, and that's where
set
we're
it out.
them. We've killed several like that.
And I mean, we've seen that one buck a couple years ago. We called him Nutsack. Remember, we got him in the summertime at one of our leases, and ended up getting him in the fall at our other lease, and those are
5 miles
apart.
Yeah.
And it's crazy when you see that deer and you're like, there's no way that's the same deer.
Same deer with what do we call him? The LA Beast.
Oh, LA Beast. Yeah. Same thing.
Far away, man.
Yeah, multiple miles away,
LA
and
Beast.
yeah, and they just cover ground, in these areas, and I think it's so unique that if anybody's ever, coming from another area to hunt these places, it takes a while to get used to it.
Oh, definitely. You'll see that with neighbors hunting the same deer. They're 3 or 4 miles apart, and they're hunting the same 200-inch deer, and they're only getting a couple opportunities to shoot that deer throughout the year. And they're waiting. And then some guy 3 miles away shoots that deer, and it's just it's frustrating. It's really fun too. And then you just never know what's gonna show up out here, which makes it really fun hunting Kansas. I mean, the unknown factor.
Sure.
I don't run a lot of cameras on public. I really like that unknown factor of what's going to show up on this public ground. And that's exciting for me. I know guys hang several cameras throughout the year. Some guys hang hundreds of cameras throughout the year. I only hang a few, and I'll hunt multiple pieces of property around here, and then 20 miles up north, 20 miles down south. And those are the places I like to go hunt. Just the unknown of, I know there's big deer there. I know I'm in a good spot, and hunt the right days, put time in the stand, and that unknown factor really gets me going.
Yeah. Well, that's the cool thing about Kansas is like you can get away with that essentially. Like we're kind of doing the same thing. Granted, we get out, or try to anyways, once in the summer to do a little bit of work, to get cameras out and get some kind of inventory. So at least we know, which, if we can key on a specific deer that we at least want to be in the vicinity of. But if not, it's hard to beat just a good spot during the right time of the year in Kansas, because they're just there. It's like, man, every big river bottom like that or something, you're gonna find one.
Yeah. And I'll go to spots where I found big sheds before, and I know there's big deer in there. And so it's kind of one of those things, like, you don't know if that deer had been taken the year before. But those are areas I focus on too, where I find big sheds.
Yeah.
In January, February, and I'll focus on those areas as well.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt Archery.
Dude, where would we be without our Hoyt bows?
Probably shooting crossbows.
or a Matthews, yeah.
One and the same. But in all seriousness, we love being Hoyt guys because you stand out. When you're in this room full of other people that shoot these other types of bows, I feel like the Hoyt guys just stick out.
Dude, it's just a legit bow. I mean, especially that carbon riser, man. I mean, I know that they've got several other aluminum lines as well, but for me, I'm shooting that RX5 in the carbon model. They've since come out with the RX7, and I can't tell you how much I love being a Hoyt guy amongst a sea full of Matthews guys. So we're out there, I think, proving them wrong, shooting 80 pounds and killing stuff.
Hey, man, if you want to get serious, get Hoyt. Bryan, are you seeing when you go in and find a big set of sheds or something on public, I assume you kind of have that mental marker in your head of like, all right, this is a place I want to revisit next year. I guess just ballpark, what have your experiences been in terms of encountering, a deer that you've found like a significant set of sheds, and then the next season being in that area and being like, yep, that's that deer.
Up north, I've had that encounter with a big, I found a 180-inch set. The next year he blew up. I got permission on that land, and the first time I hunted it in October, I saw that deer, and then never got in bow range, and I never saw him again, which is frustrating. He ended up getting taken that year by an out-of-stater. He blew up to 200 inches, but I will see those deers that in those areas where I find those sheds, but sometimes that's not their area during bow season, during hunting season. They're just in there because food sources close, and they're just traveling from bedding to food source, and during hunting season they could be miles and miles away. But occasionally, yes, I do see the deer that I find sheds from in those areas. I'll either catch them on camera during hunting season, but it's not like I'm seeing them there all the time.
Right. I think I say that because Jared and I, one of these sheds on this table, and then the one you have at your house, we knew the area that those deer were occupying pretty much all of bow season, at least. I don't know what happened in December, January, but we came back in.
Oddly enough, they were still, they were held up there.
Yeah, we came back in April, and literally within 100 yards of each other in the area we had them all on camera for months. Boom, there's at least one side of each of their sheds. So, and again, maybe that's because of the habitat and how it's like that river bottom fragmentation in that area.
It's that cedar patch. I think that they've got
thermal cover.
Yeah, there's an area of cover there that's like sufficient for essentially the entire year, and it's just remote. It's untouched, and there had to have been a food source that they were using in the late season that would have kept them in the area at least. So
yeah, I'll find them like in those sanctuaries, what I'd call. Usually I'll find like one side, and then I'll shed hunt that huge draw, and I might find the other side 2 miles away, but it's next to like a good food source, and they're traveling that bottom or that ridge to that food source, but they're coming back to that sanctuary is what I'd call it, and where they feel secure. And in those sanctuaries, that's where I find a lot of good sheds, and surprising how far I find match sets. How far between I find the match sets. Like two of my biggest ones I found this year, found one side, and the other side's 1.5 miles, 2 miles further down this draw, and it blows my mind.
It's crazy to think about a buck, carrying that one side. I mean, it's got to be heavy, like 180 inch. So you got a 85 inch shed on still hanging on one side of it. It's like
4 to 6 pounds of weight.
You'd think that would feel loppy, and they would throw it off right there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just all depends on how that, they call it the abscission line, but how that line is getting eaten away, and then is it by force that comes off? Is it by just shaking the head, or
both?
Because I mean, how many times do you find match set like with an eyesight, like there they are, right together. But you do see half racks in March, April a lot that they've lost one somewhere along the line, and are still carrying that other one.
So, Bryan, how many sheds do you think you find a year? What's a good number for you?
If I find over 100, that's a pretty good year. This year I found 139.
Holy
The year before
cow.
I found 140 something. We put in a lot of miles. Take the family out. Take my dog out.
How many miles, if you had to guess?
Oh, geez. I don't even want to guess, but I mean, there's been a weekend where I put in 25 miles and didn't find a single shed.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, those are rough days.
Yeah, those are the days that you question your motive.
Oh, definitely.
It is so weird. It's just like when we found these two sheds, it was the same deal. I think it was at the end of 10 miles where we hadn't found anything.
Yeah, we were spent.
And it was like, oh, here they all are. It's
Yeah,
just,
right.
they're either there or they're not.
Well, I was gonna, and I know this is kind of a broad question, Bryan, but it seems like maybe I don't know about last year, we didn't hunt, but I guess 2020 and 2019 we shed hunted,
and they were holding.
They were holding late, later than what I'm used to, because we usually go out there in March and we're on sheds. We had gone out in end of March or early April and run into several groups of bucks still holding.
Oh yeah, it's a weather thing probably. We thought they dropped early this year because the drought we had this year.
Right.
We thought they were dropping early, and we found a bunch early, and find them in different food sources that we weren't finding them in before. I found a lot in beans this year, which is a good area to look. I usually look at beans, but there's a lot more closer to a water source. And
when you say early, Bryan,
yeah,
what month are you talking about when you say early?
Early January.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I have found them in late December, but that's pretty uncommon in this area.
Yeah, because I know a lot of guys in Kansas, they won't even start walking till March, for the main reason that they don't want to walk a 25-mile section and then have to come back and walk that same 25-mile section.
Yeah. Mid-February is when I really start walking a lot. And that's when I start picking up a lot of bone. And by March, if you're in a good area, you're picking up several. I walk a lot on public and in some private. So I focus on that public stuff early before it gets hit hard, because we do have a lot of competition down here for shed hunting. Usually focus on those beans early just because they're so easy. They stick out like sore thumbs in those beans. I glass a lot. But you definitely have to walk it to find them, because even with glassing, you're not going to see. You'll see an 80-incher out there, but you're not going to find those little sheds.
Yeah. Do you worry, Bryan, about bumping deer out of an area like too early? I know, like around home, like if we have just a farm to hunt without a lot of surrounding public and stuff that we can access, my fear is going in without proof that the deer are shut out and like bumping them off the property. And then having them drop the shed elsewhere.
Yes, I definitely worry about that. That's why I'll focus on food sources early and just stay in the fields, hit those areas. And then mid-February, late February,
Start
I'll
jumping
go
into
in
it.
deeper. And yes, definitely. And I like to shed hunt an area, especially if it's private. I won't go walk the whole thing in one day. I like to stay on a section of that ground. So if I do push the deer, hopefully it stays on that property. And then later on the season, I'll go hunt this other side of the property and might pick up his other shed or his sheds. But there is that factor. I run a lot of cameras during shed season too, just so I can see when the majority of the deer have been dropping before I hit it hard.
Yeah. So do you have a particular strategy then? Once you've identified, hey, we're going to walk this ground today, are you walking a certain like southern sides of those hills, or taking a certain route through the property, or is it just kind of covering as much of it with as many eyes and people as possible?
I shed hunt by myself, so I will early on after I get through the fields and I find them up on the ridges a lot around here, and definitely in the feed fields because they're there during night. And I see that on camera too. They're there a lot. They're feeding hardcore, and that's a good place to start for sure. Edges is a great place. Guys, fence lines, crossings, creek crossings, stuff like that I focus on. But at the end of the day, it's about putting in the miles, walking a lot, and getting lucky too. I mean,
Yep.
You can put in all the miles you want, but sometimes you just walk right by them. Even the most seasoned guy that shed hunts, it surprises me the ones I find the next year that I'm like, man, I walked 10 yards from that shed.
Yeah,
And
100%.
It was on the ground.
Yeah, that's nuts, man. Yeah, I mean, we've had several of those. I mean, Jared, you and I picked up that set. This one, and this was, we had found, I want to say we found this one first, which this thing is like a massive baseball bat. It was probably 2+ years old, but this is probably a mainframe 180-inch 8-point at, when it was in its full right, but
Giant. Huge kickers off those
Yeah,
twos.
this was like laying by a tree, and you picked it up, and we're like, holy shit.
Well, we were standing there. We were like collecting ourselves. We were right. I mean, we could have been 100 yards from a main parking area on public. And I'm standing there. I'm like looking. I'm like, there's a bone there. There's a bone laying there.
Yeah.
And I pick it up. I'm like, this is a shed. And we're standing there like looking at it. We're like, I can't believe this is a shed. And I look, and there's the other one laying right there.
Yep. Yeah, and if it was a snake, it would have bit us. But yeah, I mean, this was, in its prime would have been 180-inch plus 8-point.
And how many guys must have walked right past that? I mean, that shed been laying on the ground for at least a year.
And it was 100 yards from a public parking area.
Yeah.
Right there. So,
Cool find.
It's one of those ones where, giants walk.
Shame that we couldn't have found that thing intact. I mean, that's
and then this one is, guys have heard us on the podcast talk about it. This was a buck that we called Wide Boy, but we had watched this buck for 4 years. I mean, he was probably 10 years old, and I put one in his shoulder blade in November, and, end up jumping him, and, it was the next fall, one of mine and Jared's buddies had hit a buck, and I was walking a section of woods, and I look up, and I see basically this, and I'm like, looks like a shed. It's November. And I walk up, I'm like, son of a bitch, it's his shed from last year. So this was the year I shot him, and I found it, 8 months later.
Yeah, it's surprising how many people walk by him. That big deadhead I found this year, I found a 213-inch deadhead, double drop tines, that died early. My buddy had him on camera. And when I got the tag from the game warden, he's like, do you know how many guys walk by that deer?
Yeah.
It was a heavily traveled public area, upland birds, guys deer hunting, elk hunting in that area as well. And he's like, I wouldn't be surprised if 500 guys walk by that deadhead. And it is in tall grass, and I got lucky. Here, I'll show you the deer. So.
Oh my God.
Wow.
213-inch double drop tines. I got a video of me picking it up. I was a little excited in the video.
Yes.
Unreal.
Was that on public, Brian?
Yes, it was on public.
Crazy, man.
And 500. The game warden said probably 500 people walked by that, and then 500 yards away from that,
dude,
wow.
I found this non-typical 10-inch basin.
Wow.
Part of Kansas, you say you're in?
That's cool, man.
And he had another tine. My buddy had it on camera. He had another tine that was 13 inches that got broke off, but he died late in the season. I found these about 500 yards apart.
Wow. You think that one was just a super old buck, Brian, the one you're holding?
I do. His skull is huge.
Yeah.
I think when he got in that fight and broke off that tine, he has a crack that goes down his skull. So I think that really messed him up.
Got his bacteria.
He probably would have survived. He was about to shed his left side. It looks like it was starting to break apart. But yeah, he died later in season.
Yep.
The other one could have got shot or wounded. but it's crazy. They were so close together, and they were by a really good food source, so they're probably worn down. And
wow,
we're just
it's funny because people miss a lot of things on these older bucks. In Kansas, Iowa's probably the same. These places that have a really older age class structure, and you have these intense fights on some of these bucks like that one. The amount of pressure it puts on their skull plates is intense, and what happens is you get those cracks, and there already is where the growth plate is, where that skull expands. There is a gap there, and so as that pressure expands and contracts on it, you get bacteria that goes down and it causes a brain abscess. And some of the research, most of it out of the South, not so much the Midwest, but out of the South, has explained that up to 10% of mature bucks, not just bucks in the population, of mature bucks in a herd will fall to brain abscesses every year. Because of that, you think of 2 5-year-olds or older going at it and cracking skulls. The amount of pressure that's put on that skull plate allows just a minimal amount of bacteria to go in, and as soon as that gets into there, that brain abscess is pretty much inevitable, and it'll kill that deer. And so people will find mature bucks and say, maybe he got shot, or maybe the rut killed him, and typically it's a brain abscess would be your most likely candidate, unless that there's a wound on him or he got hit by a car or something like that.
That's interesting. We do find a lot of big old mature deer dead here, and everyone wants to blame it on an inexperienced hunter who took a bad shot, but sometimes it's just old age.
It is. It is. I mean, if you think about it, if you've got, let's say you're covering 1,000 acres of an area, and let's say you've got, 5 bucks in Kansas that are 5 or older on that 1,000 acres, which is not, unheard of. Keep in mind that, out of those, there's a good chance that at least one of them is probably going to die from a brain abscess every year. And so that's when people start to think about these big mature bucks. Is why I kind of asked you about the sheds and then seeing that buck later on is, there's a chance that buck just dies of natural causes, and that happens out there. And when you start talking about the thing that I always relate Kansas to is you just have a lot of deer space out there, meaning there's just area for deer to go to, whether in your northeast or you're in the south central, like it's just space for deer to cover. Whereas in the Midwest, it's more fragmented, or you've got major metropolitan areas and stuff. And like it shrinks the amount of space that these deer have to go, and so when somebody says, well, that deer got shot and I just don't know about it, that might not be the case. He could have moved. He could have died of natural causes. Like there's a lot of other things that could happen to those mature bucks throughout the year.
Oh, yeah. And you always hear about those deer that disappear, and then 2 years later, he just shows up on camera, and it's
crazy.
Like, where was he?
Yeah, where'd he go? Why did he leave? What pushed him out, or what made him move? And I think we're, as a society of hunters, very quick to jump on the he disappeared, he's dead. And I will say that in a lot of cases, that's probably true, especially if you're in a heavy hunted state. But ultimately, there's a chance that, especially as that deer gets older, that another buck pushed him out and he's occupied somewhere else. And then if that buck dies, then he moves back in. Like the social dynamics, I think, of whitetails are probably one of the least understood pieces of hunting and managing deer. Like we just, as a group of hunters, we just don't know why big bucks do this or do that. It's a mystery, and that becomes part of the assumptions we have. But, I think that it's something that we can't, I don't know if we'll ever be able to put a thumb down on.
And that's what makes them so fun to chase sometimes too, because you just don't know.
Yeah.
You can put all the planning and preparation into hunting these big deer, and at the end of the day, they might not be there in your area.
Yep.
Even though you got tons of camera pictures of them throughout the year. There's something that draws them away from your area at the time you're out there hunting. And that's why I love deer hunting so much, especially big deer around this area.
Do you think
the unknown factors?
Do you think, Bryan, that you prefer shed hunting or
that's where I was going to go.
hunting?
That's the loaded question.
Or is it
man,
like, or
I'm
is it
so
like,
split on that. I love deer hunting, and there's nothing that's better than that, in my opinion. Bow hunting in Kansas.
Yeah.
But it's also fun to go out there later on, the deer that you've been seeing on camera all the time, and picking up his sheds and actually see them in person and putting an age to them. And so I'm split as far as that goes. But
well, I won't make you answer it. It's kind of like one fuels the other. Yeah, we get it.
Yeah. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Stealth Cam.
Dude, where would we be without our cell cams?
I would definitely be divorced at this point.
Yeah, I hear that.
I mean, the fact is I spent more time checking cameras than I actually did hunting prior to cell cameras. Now, at least, my wife can enjoy me being in the comfort of my own home, buried in my phone, checking those pictures.
Yeah, 100%. And dude, when it comes to trail cameras and definitely cell cameras, reliability is, I think, the number one thing that we're looking for. Stealth Cam just has a long reputation of reliable cameras, and ultimately that is the most important thing to us. They have to work.
In terms of reliability, there's not a better camera on the market than Stealth Cam, whether you're talking about the Fusion X, the Reactor, or the DS4K Transmit. And most of them are under $200.
Stealthcam.com. Check them out.
I was going to ask Bryan, just because, so are you a lifelong Kansas resident?
Yes.
So, I mean.
Born and raised in Pratt, Kansas. And,
okay.
After college, my brother's been bow hunting since the 80s. He shoots bigger deer than I do. And he really got me turned on after college to bow hunt all the time. And I've been addicted since,
And so I guess I was going to ask, like, just in terms of seeing, and you don't have to age yourself, but seeing, like, after college when you were getting into bow hunting and stuff, do you think Kansas has stayed the same? Do you think it's improved? Do you think it's decreased because there's more pressure? Just like your own observation.
Definitely here in the last 5 to 10 years, definitely a lot more pressure, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see the population decreasing anytime soon. I think there's always going to be great deer here. There's always going to be big bucks here. And it's throughout the state too. I know people like their pieces of property they hunt, but there is big deer everywhere in Kansas. Even around big cities in Kansas. You get them around Kansas City.
Yeah.
You just go south of that. I mean, there's big deer everywhere around there. And even with the pressure from out-of-staters and more people bow hunting now and hunting year-round, as far as season, I don't think it's affecting the population at all.
I was going to ask, because Jared just made the condescending content. I was going to ask about crossbows, if you thought that was starting to put a damper on, more pressure.
We've seen it seems like a lot of like former rifle or gun hunters have transitioned to crossbow hunting so that they can hunt. Understandably so, I would do the same thing. Yeah, so they can hunt the rut, they can hunt the full season, and so that leaves. I'm open to the idea that there's fewer hunters overall, but there are significantly more guys hunting much longer, and so the pressure on the deer or on the woods, overall is increased for a longer period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely seen older guys that were big time into bow hunting, turning into crossbow hunters, and hunting, later in their life where they wouldn't have bow hunted.
Which I've got no
problem
with.
In their 70s.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
sure.
Do what you got to do for what you love. When I'm 70 and I can't pull back my bow anymore, I'll be out there with a crossbow for
100%.
Sure.
Me too.
Yeah.
Definitely seeing older guys hunting during bow season where 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they wouldn't have been out there during bow season.
Right.
They would have been rifle hunting.
Yeah. And you guys have what? It's a 10-day rifle season. Usually, what's it start? December 1st?
Yeah, 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Roughly.
And it seems like, when we get into some of these areas, I mean, there's definitely bow hunters in these areas, but there's a lot of the quote unquote locals are, they're rifle hunters. They're waiting for that December rifle season, and that's what they're hunting.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot of guys who just rifle hunt, and that's what they like to do. I'm not gonna, say they shouldn't be out there. I don't really like the deer drives that some guys do. I think that's pretty unfair to the deer, but there's guys that do that around here as well, and that's what they like to do. They like to meet up with their buddies and have their deer drive for that year, and they go out one weekend and then they're done.
Yeah. The mentality difference is interesting to me. It almost seems like, and not to knock like locals at all, but like the impression that I've gotten is like, I know Jeremy and I and a lot of guys that travel from out of state are like, our primary interest is in the hunt, is in like the struggle, the pursuit,
figuring them out, the chess match,
the chase.
Yeah.
And it seems like, whether it's Kansas resident or people that just are more acclimated, more familiar with with those areas, typically it is residents. They're way more interested in the least amount of effort to get a specific deer. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like we're willing to run and gun, and I'm sure there are guys in Kansas that do this. I'm not just speaking negatively about anybody, frankly, but it's like, that just seems the mentality difference is different. Yeah. It's more, hey, there's a specific deer, and I want to get him with the least amount of effort possible. So you find him, there's like a specific box blind or just a corn pile, and they'll be like, wait till the gun season and get them. That's just the most effective way to kill them, to extend your range. And
I do think it maybe it's a bow hunting thing, but I do think that there's an element of surprise, but there's also an element of like, we know what we're looking for in terms of quality of buck or age of buck or whatever it is. And I'm not saying that a lot of those rifle guys don't, because like, I know where we're at in Southeast Kansas, like those guys don't even flinch if we don't kill anything over 170 inches.
The residents.
Yeah, the residents.
The non-residents that come out.
They'll kill.
I know where you're going with
They'll
that.
kill whatever they want, But I think those residents, even during the rifle season are very focused on like, we're killing giants. That's it. That's
or meat. I think some
meat.
of them are just
they stack a ton of does.
Oh yeah, you'll definitely see that where guys go out and they're focused on one deer, and then you'll have the guys, like you said, they're just there to shoot a bunch of does and fill up that freezer. And it's kind of iffy, I would say, like how much time they're willing to put in.
Sure. Well, I mean, they got like 10 days to 2 weeks on a rifle season to get it done. And the one thing I think, and I don't know if this is like in your part of the state, Brian, but like where we're at, it seems like these locals, because it's cattle pasture and some ag and stuff, like they see these big bucks. Like they're driving back roads in the evenings. They're seeing, they're like, yeah, there's a giant in here. And so that becomes like the focal point of anybody hunting in that area. They don't need cameras. They just like, average Joe's checking cattle. He sees a giant. He tells his neighbor tells the guys at the diner, and like, boom, it's off and running. So, it's a weird kind of mentality. In fact, one of our buddies found a 256 deadhead. Guy had seen it on the road, and just rumors of a giant buck were there. He basically saw buzzards not far from the road. I assume this deer got hit by a car. Walk down in this ditch, and there's this giant 256-inch deadhead, and then
imagine hitting a 256-inch buck with your truck.
Holy cow, man. And I mean, so now he's got this buck, and essentially, once it started to get out there, he took it to Kansas Monster Buck Classic and stuff. Then it was like this guy was hunting it, and here's a couple pictures of it. And, now it starts to leak itself out. But, prior to that, it was very hush-hush. Like, people knew about the deer, but you didn't talk about the deer.
I mean, anymore, the chances of killing a deer or seeing a deer that nobody else has seen before or has knowledge on is
rare.
Yeah, it's just that they've, like you said, they've moved or...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the guy's still hunting him 5 miles away.
It comes out after the fact. I mean, that's the blessing and curse, I guess, of social media is, when finally that deer gets out there and people see that it was killed... people come out of the woodwork from all over the place. Like, oh, I had daylight pictures of them all the time. Oh, I missed that deer, so-and-so. Some of these deer have broadhead wounds, broadhead stuck in them.
Yeah.
That's funny you say that, because those 2 deadheads I showed you, never had them on my camera. No one was posting that on social media. And then after I found those and people saw my Instagram, saw those on Facebook, and these pictures from guys in this area who were hunting that deer, and just didn't know where that deer went. And it's like, yeah, he was dead early, and a lot of guys had trail camera pictures of those deer, and we just didn't hear about it until I found him dead. And I wouldn't have been sharing them, if I knew that deer was still alive,
Sure.
those camera pictures. And yeah, it's really hush hush until someone either shoots them or it's that deer's found dead.
Yeah.
Which,
You do wonder, like, whenever deer go missing, like, we are always speculating, wow, you think a deer of that size, if somebody killed him, we probably would have heard about
it
it.
all the time. We said it with this deer because it was like, this deer, we figured he probably would have been, low 180s.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, that deer's big enough that if somebody found him dead during shed season or, something, like, we would have heard about it. It turns out this deer at least lived another year. We had pictures of him the next year, and so that kind of gives you the confidence, like, okay, maybe, like, if he does die, we hear about it. We had another buck that I was hunting that was 180s that got hit by a cattle truck, and they ended up bringing the dead head over, and I mean, it was a giant, it was low 180s. But yeah, I mean, you get a little bit of it, but it's not until it's a confirmed dead. Like, if it's just a mystery, you don't know.
Yeah, I was hunting a big double beam last year on this public ground, and it's hunting them. I had my last picture in early November of him, and he just disappeared, never saw him again. And then down the road, I'm going to this taxidermist shop, and he's showing me all these deer from that area. And sure enough, that double beam is sitting in there on his floor.
Wow.
I got to put my hands on him, and he was a nice deer. And I was like, man, I wondered where he went, because so I got that confirmation that he was taken. Passed on a lot of good deer waiting for that deer, which sucks, but that's the name of the game.
It is, man. I mean, and that's the kind of devastating part of, not necessarily putting all your eggs in one basket, but most of us bow hunters definitely have a deer in mind that we're going out and we're hunting and we're pursuing, and sometimes I think, anybody's hunted long enough, bow hunted long enough, feels like they end up hunting a ghost, because you just,
Well, dude, we've learned the value of just over time, putting miles on, whether it's to find sheds or as we're scouting an area to hunt, especially mule deer. But I think that's more and more true. Like a couple of years ago, I was in the habit of going out and sitting on a bean field or alfalfa field. And I'm like, I'm just going to watch this. And the hope there was, like, you would get an opportunity to get a really good look at a buck we might suspect is in the area. And that probably is still the best way to do it. But the amount of information that you give up by not being in the truck and driving and covering ground is magnificent. I mean, is huge. So anymore, dude, I don't sit on any field. I'm in the truck almost exclusively.
Yeah, time in the stand pays off, but yeah, like you're saying, sometimes just
in the summer months is what I'm talking about. In the summer. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, getting on a ridge line and just glassing and seeing what those deer are doing. As soon as hunting season comes around, they might not be doing that same thing. So in that field edge where you're always seeing them early season, I mean, that might not pay off. But scouting, driving around, there's definitely good stuff into doing that instead of just being out in your stand a lot.
We do that a lot in November, even. I mean, if it's a warmer day or we're just not seeing deer, like, we'll just get on the roads and start cruising and getting close to public access that we can hunt. And even if we spot a big buck in private that's close to public, it's like, hey, there's a chance. Like, what's our access look like? How do we get in there?
How many times have we gained new perspective by getting out and driving around? I mean, dude, being in the stand is a commitment, and I mean, probably one I feel like you shouldn't make unless you're confident about it. You're better off in some cases covering ground,
just moving,
getting information, and I mean, ideally we should all want to spend as little time in the stand as possible. I understand.
That's the benefit of our group, though, is like when there's 3 or 4 of us hunting, hopefully somebody shoots one first day, and then that's your eyes on the road, so while you're sitting stand 100%. Hoping, you got a guy out there saying, hey, dude, I don't know what you're seeing, but 2 miles up here against this public, I just saw a stud run in there. Well, then it's like, who wants to go up in there?
That's how them deer get killed too. Is you see them, you make a move, it works out. Way more often probably than just sit in a spot and sit in it and sit and sit. I mean, eventually they'll pan out, but to be effective with your time, it's get that information and use it right away.
100%.
Yeah, definitely. And talking to farmers too helps, especially if they're not deer hunters. I've had farmers come up to me and be like, man, there is a huge one over in this area, and I'm hunting public across the way, not hunting his farm and the information you get from usually it's guys that aren't hunting that are telling you this, but finding those big bucks in the area, and then hunting as close to you can as far as these public areas are. And you don't always have to be in the spot, but to be close to the spot pays off a lot. And,
right on.
Cool, man. Well, listen, dude, we appreciate you coming on. We'll have to look you up when we're out in Kansas here and in the near future. Whether it may not be this trip because we're bound on time, but definitely in the fall and hopefully when we come back and shed hunt in the spring. And if anybody hasn't already, your handle's what? Kansas Shed Hunter on Instagram?
Yes, Kansas Shed Hunter.
Yep. And obviously, if you're just looking to see like what the state has to potentially offer.
Good place to look.
Good place to look. Yeah, good place to look.
Yeah.
Brian won't give you any GPS coordinates, but they're at least inside the state borders of Kansas.
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. And like watching your guys' podcasts, your stuff on YouTube, and can't wait for deer season, man. Hope you guys have good luck here in Kansas.
Well, we'll make sure we share some pics if we get some good bucks down there.
Yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch, Brian.
Definitely.
Cool, man. Well, we appreciate you coming on, dude.
Yeah. Sounds good, guys. Take care.
Cool. It was a good episode. I mean, just maybe if you're not going to hunt Kansas, you're not excited like we are, but we're going to be there next week. We're going to be hanging stands and cameras. We're going to be starting to try to target in on some of the bucks like you see on the table here.
Dude, there's something about just knowing that you're going to be in an area with giant bucks. Like that's what Kansas offers. That's what a bunch of those Midwestern states offers. Is if you go there, there's a chance. There's a chance. We say you can't kill them if they're not there.
Well, I mean, dude, if you look at this table, there. You've got probably a high 140 set there. This deer would have been what we would said 160-ish.
It's an 82-inch shed.
Yeah, so he probably would have been high 150s, low 160s this year, and this is 2 years ago.
I mean, dude, if that's an 82-inch shed
with a, let's say, 18-inch spread.
That's 160. That's 180-inch deer.
Yeah, 175, 180-inch deer.
Yeah.
This deer was the one we called White Whale a couple years before I killed him, and I killed him at 175. So that was on ours, and then obviously this was Wide Boy. He would have been 180s. This deer would have been. So I mean, right here you got 1, 2, 3, 4 booners, that we've encountered in our time on there.
They're out there.
Plenty more to go.
They're out there.
So
I'm optimistic. So I'm hunting public too, primarily, and we've just got like a sweet little way to access it that I think makes that spot good. And I mean, there's 2 for sure, and I'm sure there's more since. I mean, it's been 2 years since we've been there.
Dude, it was crazy. I was just looking at old pictures and like thinking about. We were talking about Kansas that day, and I realized like out of my top 5 bucks. First of all 5 of them with a bow. I killed a 146 in Kansas, which is that buck over here. Killed a 155 in Kansas, which is that buck over there. Killed a 157 in Kansas, which I don't have mounted yet.
Yep.
That 163 is Pennsylvania,
Yep.
and then the 175 in Kansas. So of my 5 biggest bucks, 4 are Kansas.
Yeah, and that'll continue to be the case. I mean, you kill big deer where big deer are at. And you're in Kansas, so we're going to Kansas.
I'll tell you what, and it sounds crazy. Like when we get there on Thursday, Jared and I will. By the time we get to Thursday night, if we do this YouTube live, we'll look like shells of men. Because I mean, we will work hard all day Thursday, and we will put miles on.
I looked like a shell of a man yesterday after I put 13 food plots in, and then got up at 4 o'clock the next morning to clean ice cream machines.
It'll be, I mean, we put in a lot, and then, it's all for the chance of, like, if you get a buck that looks like this on camera, it's like we're in the game. I
found some more cameras too, so we have a couple more maybe to add to the mix. I've
got 3 or 4 too.
I say we try to get 6 or 8 out.
Okay, let me see what else I've got. Let me see what else. Oh, I have 2 more in the back of my truck too. 1, 2, 3. I have at least 3 to add to the mix. I've tested a couple of these. I've got some of the new Terra cells from Wild Game coming today. They're actually really nice. I trust them as being good cameras to put out as well.
Okay.
So they're coming today. So I'll put that. Dude, I don't want to distract from it, and obviously disclosure, they're our sponsors, but it's cell cam season right now, and I know people are looking like the cameras that I think we have come to trust is, first of all, Stealth Cam Fusion X. I think you can get, if you go to Stealth Cam's website, I think you get 2 for $150 right now.
Yeah.
No brainer.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt that the image quality is like not as good as some of like there's some really expensive cameras.
Yeah, like a Spartan or a Reconyx.
And your Reconyx.
But I mean, you're getting 2 cameras for $150. It's going to cost me $400 for a Spartan and $600 for a Reconyx.
Yeah. Well, and so we buy the stealth cams fully, and we pay pretty much full price. We buy them from like Midway USA and stuff, knowing that these we might not get back to them, and it's not like they're disposable cameras, but man, it's a lot easier to justify a $100 camera over a $750 one.
100%.
And sometimes you can't get back, or
I mean, we're burying some of these deep, and we don't. So we've got these Terra cells I got are really nice from Wild Game. They're $99 a piece, and then the Muddy Merge is the other one or Manifest. Those are the other 2 Muddy cameras we've been using. But those 5 cameras, first of all, every one of those cameras I think is under $100 or under. And Wild Game's got its own system, but everything else goes through that Stealth Cam command app. And I mean, yeah, if you're going for quantity of cameras, you want reliability, you want battery life. Obviously, put lithium batteries in these things. Don't cheap out. Put lithiums in. Put them in the right place. Hopefully you've got good signal, and you can expect these things. Don't put it on 3 pictures every 5 seconds. Like, just be smart about how you use these cameras, and they'll last several months in these places. And like you said, if we get back to them in the spring to pick them up during shed season, awesome. If for some reason we don't, yeah, I mean, it sucks. We left $100 out there, but it did its job, hopefully, for what we're paying. And
yeah, I think one tip would be like take Verizon and an AT&T out with you.
Which I've ordered both.
Yeah, just throw 2 over your shoulders if you're walking in somewhere, and then see which one connects, has better connection.
Yeah, because that'll save your battery for sure. So, yeah, I mean, check them out, man. If you're in the cell cam game, and you're looking for good quality pictures but not breaking the bank, which between you and I don't know, we're running.
It's $15 for 3 for unlimited.
Yeah, we're running 60 some cameras probably.
Yeah, probably.
We couldn't afford that for Spartans and Reconyx.
It's a write-off.
I still couldn't afford it. I'd have to
Another tip: start a whitetail-oriented business so you can write off trail camera expenses.
I'd have to mortgage my house for my camera addiction. So, anyways, yeah, that's about it. So hopefully, if you're listening to this, if you haven't, go back to last week. We should have done a YouTube live, and there definitely that Tuesday. Mark Drury episode drops, which is a really good one. So if you haven't gone back, check that out, and we'll catch you next week.
Later.
Take me